What's up?
Hello.
Right. I just saw something funny today. We had some guys working on our landscaping at the radio station, and one of the guys was wearing an Ivy Envy t-shirt.
Fuck that guy. I doubt Corey's watching on YouTube right now, so I should be fine. They're officially done. They just released their last episode after the big trades.
Oh, wow.
That was like after 2 years of no episodes, or at least 1 year of no episodes. So
yeah.
All right, are you ready to get going then, or do you have anything you want to?
No, nothing really.
Go over. All right, let me get my music ready and let's go. All right. Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zerl. With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick. Visit us at IHateCritics.net, Everyone's a Critic Podcast.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Our handle is CriticsPod. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Alexa, all your podcatchers. Please rate and review the show. Give us a 5-star review. We'll read your review on the air. And if you do so, let us know about it. We have a giveaway on our social media pages. They're pinned to the top. Is there anything more you need to say about that one, Sean? Or
no, I'll just give you a Blu-ray of an Asian movie.
Yes, and they're great movies too. So you'll really enjoy them. And that's if you give us a 5-star review on any of the platforms, but you need to let us know. And then you can hit us up on the platforms or email us at critics@IHateCritics.net.
And also, just quickly, thank you to Wellgo USA for making it possible for us to have each of these titles. The titles, which I don't have in front of me right now, but they're all basically just Asian films.
Yes. We're on YouTube, record live. There'll be a notice on our social media pages there if you want to watch us. Or you can subscribe to the YouTube page as well. We're on patreon.com/criticspod. The best would help support the podcast. And then our TeePublic page is over at IHateCritics.net. If you click on the TeePublic link or search CriticsPod at TeePublic. All right, let's get the pictures up for our YouTube listeners and start the show. And we will start with The Suicide Squad.
The Suicide Squad is another take on DC's team of supervillains, this time from the director James Gunn, best known for the Guardians of the Galaxy series, and what he did amazing things with that. And here he's trying to bring some of that Guardians of the Galaxy energy to this Suicide Squad thing, and it doesn't work. I thought, I didn't know how much I really didn't like this movie until I actually sat down to write about it. And I realized that as I started to write about it, like as much as I did laugh during this movie, there's a certain emptiness to the storytelling here that is inescapable when you sit down to actually think of it. Like as an experience, as it's happening, it's fine. And I'm sure there are probably many people who are watching right now or listening right now thinking, well, I enjoyed it while it was on. I'm sure you did. Try thinking of it right now and remember something that was funny. and I know probably many of you can do that, but I couldn't. When I sat down to actually do it, I tried to think of the things that actually really did make me laugh and stood out to me. And they're all Margot Robbie moments from her, this brief section right in the middle of the movie that centers entirely on Harley Quinn. That is a very funny, very inventive segment that is very much in the style of what we know of James Gunn. But everything else, especially the John Cena stuff, is incredibly forced. And Cena especially, I love Cena, and he's doing his best here. But I think he's really overmatched by the amount of things that they have him do. And I think that is in the trailer. There's an element right there in the trailer that demonstrates that this beach full of penises that he promises he would eat on behalf of freedom. That joke is so long, and I get that part of the joke is how long it is for him to get through it, but you can just sense the struggle. Like that had to be take 53 or something, like the number of times that he had to do that to get it right. You can just sense the strain. And then I don't know why they decided to cast Idris Elba in the lead of this. I think Idris Elba is a great TV actor, but it is in movies thus far. I've not been impressed by him since Pacific Rim, if I'm being completely honest. Here, I mean, putting him in a role like of a character named Bloodsport, whose main attributes are that he's really good with weapons, after we've just had Will Smith, who is super charismatic, who is a complete movie star, playing a character named Deadshot, who's really good with weapons. It doesn't, even as bad as Suicide Squad was, that first Suicide Squad in 2016, Will Smith is still a better, more charismatic leading man than Idris Elba is. And so he's kind of in that shadow regardless of what he does, because the characters are too similar. So yeah, Margot Robbie is great. I really liked her. I really like what Harley Quinn does in the movie. The shark character, I think Stallone does a great job with his, with the voicing of that character. The polka dot guy is completely wasted, useless character that is just, I don't know why he was there. And then, of course, they've got this opening parody set of Suicide Squad characters, people played by Flula Borg and several other. Michael Rooker is in that. And Pete Davidson, you're right, and Nathan Fillion, and that's just this useless parody of the notion of Suicide Squad that is never funny for 1 second. Like there are zero laughs to be had from any of that, and I'm just not even sure why that was even included. It's just this insanely unfunny series of scenes. I don't know. Like I said, I thought while I was watching that I was kind of enjoying it. I think part of that just had to do with how much I really liked the Harley Quinn sequence in the middle. But beyond that, Joel Kinnaman is boring. The young woman who plays Ratcatcher 2, that character isn't particularly interesting. I'm just suddenly I realized as I was writing about it, like this is a very empty experience.
Yeah, and I mean, I get what he was going for in that opening sequence. It's shocking. You're killing off known actors. I mean, not hugely known, but people we recognize. And people who've been doing press, so it's, I get it, but it wasn't shocking enough for me. And then I just thought the chemistry between Cena and Idris Elba wasn't great. And I don't blame them. I blame James Gunn. I could see the stuff playing funny while they're writing it, or even while they're messing around on set, but the way he captured it just didn't work. And it really was disappointing. I didn't even enjoy it while I was watching it. Other than, again, you're right, Margot Robbie in all three of these movies has been the standout star, which is why she keeps coming back.
Yeah.
I just, in some ways, I'm more disappointed by this one because James Gunn had more control than Ayers had.
Yeah.
And and I think what's good about that is better than what's good about this one. Obviously, this plays better as a movie, but I don't know. I feel like David Ayers, his career hasn't been the same since that. I don't think it's fair because he had his legs cut out from underneath him. And I just don't, and then I look around and see this getting amazing reviews right and left, and I just don't get it. I mean, other than Margot Robbie being really impressive, and even if you watch the press, I mean, John Cena's funny on the talk shows doing what he's doing. It just didn't translate to this movie, for me at least.
No, I'm with you. It didn't translate for me either. Like I found him more awkward than funny, and I get that the character is supposed to be awkward, but I still I don't think it didn't translate to funny awkward. It translated almost to cringe for me.
Right, and not the good kind. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was just not. I feel bad because I feel like I'm missing something, but maybe I don't. We're probably not. And it's frustrating too because the Guardians movies are so entertaining, and this is just Guardians light and very light with Margot Robbie being awesome. I mean, that scene where she unlocks locks herself from the lock. She actually did that, and it's really cool. Now it looks like a stunt double because the way he shot it, but it's a neat scene, and the whole middle part with her is great. The character itself is amazing, and she's knocked it out of the park since the beginning. I don't know.
Here we have a movie that's building up to an ending that is supposed to be just this most outlandish thing in the world. We've got it. I don't know if this is a spoiler or not. There's a giant starfish in this movie, and this should be like we should be building to something. The film should feel like it's rolling towards this, big, giant, absurd moment of a large sentient starfish, and it doesn't feel like anything at the end. It just by that time it's exhausting by that point, and you just want it to be over. And then of course, if you don't have main character powers, you get turned into this starfish zombie things. But if you have main character powers, you're fine.
Yeah, and even the character that killed off isn't all the way dead, and so it's like even that is weak. And you look at the Guardians movies, and they don't have the best endings, but they're funny enough because of the way you set up your characters. And then they just like one of them, they like dance to end the movie.
That's the first one, yeah.
Yeah.
The second one's got a really kind of emotional ending, really.
You're right, but the first one, this is more in line because the starfish is stupid. It's stupid looking. It's not funny. I think they're trying to be funny. Even the line about the starfish and the butthole, it just sounds like a forced joke early on. Again, by Cena, James Gunn wrote it. I don't know. Maybe this could have worked as a Guardians movie, but this is supposed to be a darker, more violent movie, and it's gory, mainly at the beginning, but not.
That's another thing. Yes, that's a good point. Is that it is incredibly violent at the beginning, and when you start off that hot, you've got nowhere left to go. Now the next deaths aren't going to be as impactful because you've just you blew a guy up after he threw his detachable arms at people, or you cut this guy in half, or you filled Jay Courtney's character, who was supposed to be like, I guess, a kind of, well, he was in the original, so I mean, you one of those holdovers, it's like blown up, like just burned alive. So I mean, that's supposed to be shocking, but when you start off at that high a level of gore and violence, where do you go from there? Like you've already spent all of your bullets, and now you've got to circle back around and try and shock us again, and really it's more exhausting than it is exciting.
Only thing you could have done is kill Harley Quinn, and we don't want that.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but again, everybody else loves it, so I don't know. I actually like this next movie better, and I don't even really like this next movie. That's not it. Where's Jungle Cruise is in here somewhere. Where's Jungle Cruise? All right, Jungle Cruise somehow didn't make my cut, so let's just talk about Jungle Cruise real quick.
Oh yeah, okay. Jungle Cruise stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Emily Blunt in a story based off of a Disney ride. It tells the story of a guy running a jungle cruise and a woman who wants to use his jungle cruise to get to this secret tree and some ancient jungle that has healing powers. And this is a movie that exists. That's basically my main takeaway. This exists. This is a thing that is in the world, and it has no positive or negative value to me whatsoever. It is the equivalent of watching a blank screen for the same amount of time. I had the same would have the same amount to say about it. It's not a bad movie. It's not a good movie. It exists to me, and I didn't laugh. I wasn't annoyed. There's a level of professionalism involved. I like Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt. I don't buy Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt, but I enjoy them as human beings. Maybe not as much as these characters, because again, these characters are characters we've seen in any dozen movies similar to this. And the thing about it is that this is basically, it feels like a Pirates of the Caribbean movie because it's very similar, but it doesn't have Johnny Depp. And what it underlines is that what Johnny Depp brought to Pirates of the Caribbean was this unpredictable, anarchic spirit that takes this very conventional thing and makes it something else. And that's not who Emily Blunt and Dwayne Johnson are. They're not those anarchic elements that can turn something from what it is into something that it's wasn't supposed to be or what is it expected to be. Depp was constantly completely unpredictable and weird and funny, and they're playing this entirely straight. And as they play this material entirely straight, it's not very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. It's the fact that you or me or anybody who, if you like Rock and Emily Blunt, it's just watchable enough to get through, but it kind of begins and ends there. And it's not because of the characters, just because you like them as people or actors, which is the only reason I prefer to wear Suicide Squad, because I'll take those two over Cena and Idris Elba.
That's your SummerSlam main event, and you're taking.
Right. I mean, that now you got the Margot Robbie. Again, she's so good in that role, but it's just, other than Birds of Prey, there hasn't really been a great movie yet. And that's, I don't know if it's great, it's good. It's very good. But I just, I think, but yeah, Jungle Cruise is, you're okay if you missed it.
You're not missing anything. It's not an essential movie. It's barely a movie. It like I said, it's a thing that exists in the world.
Yeah. All right. Stillwater,
another thing that unfortunately exists in the world. It's a movie starring Matt Damon as a man from Oklahoma who travels to France because his daughter is in jail there. She has been in jail for several years at the time of we joined the story, and it's because several years earlier she was accused of and found guilty of killing her roommate, who was also apparently her lover. The father goes to France to visit her, ends up spending more time, and begins to invest himself sort of in a new investigation of what happened. There's essentially a new lead, potentially, that may lead to this person that may have actually committed the murder. And there are basically two movies going on here. There's one with him and his daughter, and then there's another story where he's becoming part of this French family with this woman who takes him in. He becomes kind of a surrogate to her daughter. And over a period of about a year of him living there, he moves in, and there begins to be a romance there. It's kind of interesting, but at the same time, it's kind of also very distracting. And the movie just is divided in these two very different stories that neither of which has much time. On top of which, this is based off of, loosely based off of ripping off of the Amanda Knox story, and really just takes nothing important or interesting away from that story. Because the fact was that she was completely innocent, and this movie is playing with the notion of being innocent or not innocent. And it's really, that element bugged me, because I'm big on this story, like of how badly treated she was. And Tom McCarthy admitted that he did base this on her without ever speaking to her, and it's not like you could deny it. There's no other precedent for for the story that he's telling here. This is a movie that wants to also kind of maybe mix in some both sides sort of politics to it, which is weird and not necessary. Damon's great in this movie. I mean, he's a tremendous actor. I just don't think there's enough focus. I don't think this movie has enough energy or life to it to really gain any interest either way. I think I was slightly more interested in the romantic plot because they're two such different people, and you're kind of seeing him grow as a person in that role, whereas he's kind of stays the same guy in the other part of the movie. Overall, I would just find this movie desperately mixed to negative for the most part.
Yeah, this is one of those of two minds. I as a movie, I thought it was very good. I actually liked the way they intertwined the two stories. I took my kids to it. They actually liked it because I couldn't find my daughter and wanted to go, and I couldn't leave my son home alone. So they both actually liked it quite a bit. What bugs me is, one, we've watched two pretty original movies we're going to get to later on, which when you have that the same week you watch a very straightforward movie, it's not fair to this movie. But then there's the Amanda Knox thing. It's just not fair to her, and it's not you're inspired by what you're inspired by. You want to make a movie, and I get it, but for the rest of her life, she's going to have people questioning whether she did it or not. And now you got a movie. They're using her name in press. Like you mentioned, he admitted to it. They're not doing it every time they talk, but they're doing it enough to sell the movie. And that's just not fair. And there are other examples, but this one is specific to what Amanda Knox was accused of. There's been Americans that got arrested and stuff, we had to try to get them back, but not like, this was like roommate, a sex cult thing they're trying to play off. Literally everything that happened in her case happened here was just in a different spot, and the dad didn't.
Right down to even the guy who they think actually did it, accusing her of hiring him to do it. Like that is something that even came up in the trial of the guy who actually killed Amanda Knox's roommate.
Right. And then
fully false, by the way, fully false, totally made up on his part.
But in this movie, it's not.
Right.
And that's what
it's intended to create drama here, which again is irresponsible.
It's if this were a wholly original idea, I think it works. It does create drama, but the fact that the story exists, I don't know.
And there's an entirely irresponsible ending on top of it.
Right. It just kind of bummed me out. But you're right. Matt Damon is really, really good in this. One of his better performances, and it's just kind of a shame it's in this movie. I've always liked him, but man, he just says stupid shit sometimes. Did you hear what he just came out with about a week ago?
That his child taught him not to say,
just recently taught him not to say a gay slur.
Yeah.
Like within this year. It's like, really? And
that was a tough one to try and retcon after that. You can't put that genie back in the bottle.
Right.
There was an interesting note. I was talking to one of the movie theater managers after I saw the movie, and they were telling me about how a guy walked out of Stillwater and goes, what that you promised that they said that Matt Damon's supposed to be in that movie. I didn't see Matt Damon at all.
Oh my God. Well, that's the other thing is I heard Matt Damon on a couple of podcasts. He's worried about the way they're marketing it because they're halfway marketing it like a Liam Neeson movie, like he's going to an action film.
Yeah, that does. Yeah.
They're not totally going there, but he's definitely, on every podcast I've heard him on, he's kind of said, this isn't that movie. I love those movies, but this is not that movie.
There are elements of that movie.
Yeah, I guess but it's not heightened, it's, and that scene at the soccer game match or whatever, that's believable and it's scary and you're just like, you're frustrated. You're like, don't do that. That's a great scene, the great couple scenes, but it's still not, there's so much outside of the movie that pulls me out of it that I just wish they wouldn't have done. And irresponsible is a great word. It just bums me out that they did it, and it affects my opinion of the movie because of it. And they should have known better.
They really should have. It's really terrible. And just would you please? I'm begging people to just listen to Amanda Knox for a couple of minutes because she's talked about this and what she's not whining. She's right. People are accusing her of whining about this, and you're just wrong. Just go actually take a look at this case. The way that pop culture has treated her is so shitty. We had, about the time that she was actually like in the middle of this, Lifetime goes and makes a movie basically accusing her of having done it without having any evidence of it. And now you've got a movie like this that seems to intimate that she was part of doing it too. And it's like, that's really just insanely irresponsible and wrong to somebody who went through a horrific trauma.
And I don't think their intent is to do that, but they should know better. It's just like when the Louis C.K. thing happened and Matt Damon kind of came to his defense. It wasn't that bad. Like, come on, you know better. You don't say that, it's just more that than anything else. Their intent, I'm sure, was not as bad as it came off, but I don't know. You should know better than that. And she's not asking for money. She just doesn't want her name being used all the time. It's really frustrating.
Or if you're going to try and tell a story that is basically about her, how about talking to her at least? How about that? Just give her the courtesy of talking to her. They didn't even bother to talk to her.
Yeah. White guys. Gotta love them. All right. You wanted to also talk about Man Under the Table. I have not seen this one yet.
Man Under Table. This is a very interesting one because it's only available via the Arrow's film service, their own personal like streaming service, which Arrow is a distribution company that makes very low budget movies, and they acquire older films and they distribute them via their own platform, which is really cool. This is a very strange movie about a man in Hollywood, or in a version of Hollywood that is almost entirely, it looks like cardboard sets and like very fake, and all your extras are these like cardboard people. And he's a guy who's an industry poser. He tells his friend that he's trying to make a movie, and his friend says, "Oh, I actually am making a movie," and it just sets him off on this jealous rage. And over and over again, things just keep kind of enacting themselves on this guy as different sorts of humiliations as he tries to go about his life and tries to create something. Tries to get his way into the Hollywood system, and it's very funny. The various levels of parody at play here just get exponentially more interesting throughout this film. He's got a very funny parody of a YouTuber. He's got all these various industry people making these all speaking this industry jargon about everybody talks about fracking. Like every screenplay has to secretly be about fracking. or identity politics. Fracking and identity politics are in every screenplay, and if you can promise both, you've got a deal. It's really clever, and I really adore this movie, and I wanted to call attention to it because I want people to check out Arrow and Arrow's streaming service so they can see this very strange kind of movie and really give these guys a chance. It's an incredibly low budget. Everybody looks like they're dressed as homeless people, but they're all Hollywood people. And like I said, just the whole premise is really, really smart and really well played. And I just really think this is a very, very clever, very underrated movie.
That sounds fantastic. Did you watch anything from 91 before we move on?
I can't even remember what the
Okay. I want just to run, because we're probably going to get into spoiler territory from here on out.
Yeah.
But in 1991, I'll just kind of read off a list of movies. Hot Shots, love it.
Yeah.
Doc Hollywood, whatever. Body Parts, never seen it. Rover Dangerfield, Return to the Blue Lagoon, Bingo, Delirious, Pure Luck, Double Impact. Nothing that's other than Hot Shots that really stood the test of time for me.
I think I like Doc Hollywood a lot. I'm not sure how well it will hold up. I didn't watch it, but I really did like that movie a great deal back in the early '90s, and it does have that kind of it does sort of distill the grown up of Michael J. Fox charisma. And it's one of the few movies that really, outside of the Back to the Future movies, where you get to see what people like about Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, I saw it maybe in the late 90s. I liked it when I watched it, but it's been forever. And I just never went back to it. Everything else, what I have seen, I never went back to either. I don't even remember liking Double Impact. So, all right, we're gonna close with the dud. But anyway, we'll start with John and the Hole.
Oh, yes. John and the Hole. This is from director Pasquale Sisto, and it stars a young man named Charlie Shotwell. And this is a movie that's got a very unique and very daring premise. A 13-year-old boy named John discovers there's a hole in the forest behind his house. It's an incomplete bunker that there's no way out of it. It's just a hole in the ground that they didn't complete. And this sparks in him this idea to do something that is, we're not sure exactly what his motivation for doing it is, but he does it. He takes his entire family, his mother and father and sister, Michael C. Hall, Jennifer Ailey, and Thaisa Farmiga, and places them in this hole. He puts them unconscious and places them in this hole, and you watch this thing unfold, and it's such a crazy thought that someone like this could do this, but this kid is so haunting and so convincing that you're just kind of fascinated by him. He begins to he knows that his mother is using sleeping pills, so he decides to test the pills and their strength. He tests them on himself. He tests them on a gardener, and once he realizes the strength of the amount of sleeping pills he needs to use, that's what he's going to do in order to get his family knocked out enough to be put into this hole. What he plans to do once they're in there, again, he doesn't seem to have a plan, and he's at once calculated, and at the same time he's a 13-year-old who doesn't understand follow through. Like, this is all entirely new to him, and you're watching a 13-year-old act his way through sociopathy, and not realizing, of course, that he's a sociopath. No one else seeing that he's a sociopath, but you're watching those wheels turn as he kind of figures that out. And it is fascinating to watch. This movie is so elegant and so beautiful, and at the same time, so incredibly well observed. It creates this atmosphere of tension that does not lift because this child is completely unpredictable. And his unpredictability, combined with this very unique premise, just really grabbed me. I was just riveted by this. And I think Pasquale Sisto has just an amazing eye. I mean, just you can see from this trailer alone just how smart he is with the way he does a visual, this beautiful bucolic setting and these cold, dark cement square around it. That's a fucking great image. And the whole thing is filled with these great images throughout. There's this game that he plays with a friend where they're drowning each other, and this scene is just filled with insane amounts of tension because John doesn't know where his boundaries are, and so you don't know what's going to happen. And that happens a number of times. At first he delivers food to his family, and then he disappears for days and doesn't take them anything, and then he does again, and it's just the way he enacts just making them a meal is creepy and weird. I just think this movie is fantastic. It's not getting great reviews for whatever reason. I don't get that, but I thought this movie was amazing, and we'll get into another part of it in a moment, but I want to get your reaction first, from just the basics of it.
I mean, I love the fact that it exists first and foremost. Having, a comic movie, a Disney movie, a very straightforward Hollywood movie this week. It's plus next we have this A24 movie that had kind of a midsummer effect to me. I'm not going to throw it up with midsummer, but this was a nice something fresh that I really was glad I got to see. The fact, sociopaths exist in our everyday life, and some of them, they don't even know it sometimes.
Yeah.
A lot of them are salespeople. Tell me I'm wrong.
I can't.
And that mixed with this adolescence that they're trying to, I don't want to say symbolize because it's not that, but it follows basically that of what, when you first become an adult, you kind of do the same thing naturally, just not the way, not crazy. uh, the way they work it through this kid and the way they watch him kind of deal with what he's going through is very fantastic. Uh, the tension is amazing. And then let's not forget the parents and the sister. Their interaction inside the hole, adds another level of tension to the movie. Why are they doing this? And
Yeah.
they're the ones making you trying to figure out why. So I absolutely love it. This is a movie I could turn on, and I think we'll get to that in a second. But it would be the only way I'd turn on it is if, I don't know. We'll have to get to it later. It would take a lot for me to do it, but it's not out of the question. But other than that, it's still, even if I turned on, I still am glad it exists. I love the originality of it. I love the way it looks. It's just such a beautiful looking movie. So, and not in a the way it's hard to not say The Green Knight because we're gonna get to that later. That's beautiful too, but in different ways.
Right.
But you're right. The tension is just, it's amazing. And I don't know, from here on out, for the rest of the podcast, be prepared for spoilers. I don't want to have to move stuff around. So for this and The Green Knight, there's probably going to be spoilers here and there. Although The Green Knight's a retelling of a movie, or a story. But anyway, the 3, 2, 1. Anything here is from here forward is fair game for spoilers.
So
go ahead.
What happens in this movie is very, I guess part of this is very controversial, and I think this is part of what's driven some people to dislike this movie. There is a subplot of sorts, or is it not a subplot, or is it a framing device? It's hard to say. At a certain point, after you've been introduced to John and his family, and you've begun to see something of their lives, we cut away to this other story. A mother is talking to her daughter. Gail is talking to Lily. And the conversation is very strange. It's very stilted. The daughter has been refusing to leave her room. Her and her mother are kind of they're not bickering, but there's a certain weird tension there. They have this seemingly sweet conversation, and then she just asks her mother to tell her the story of John in the Hole. And when she says that, we cut to this title card of John in the Hole, and we return to John and his family. And it seems to indicate that the story of John in the Hole is that a parable. And whether it is or not, I'm not actually sure. Which I know it sounds like that should be something that should really piss me off, not being sure. But honestly, this movie is so hypnotic and held me in such sway that I didn't get upset about what this means and what this is about, because it gets weirder. We return to Gail and Lily later on. A frantic Gail tells Lily that she is leaving and that Lily is not coming with her, that she is going to leave Lily by herself in this house. Oh, and I've amassed $100,000. It's in a bag on the bed. It'll sustain you for the next year or so while you figure out what to do with your life. But I'm leaving and you're not coming. And she's 9 years old. She's frantic. She doesn't know what to do. She's terrified, this poor little girl, and she's very effective at being terrified. My heart was breaking for every moment of that scene. I don't know what that is intended to mean, because it seems to have no relation to the John and the Hole story whatsoever. Though I have been thinking about it a lot, because I can't stop thinking about this movie in many ways. There's an element here of religious parable, I believe, where we're talking about essentially God leaving his people to their own devices, like the absence of God as a parent, God represented by a parent. Here's a paradise for you to live in, make of it what you will, but you will feel my absence within that, and that is pain and despair, the absence of God. That's just my reading of that one particular part. But again, how that relates to John and his family. I mean, John essentially is acting as a god, taking control of his family's life in some way. And his absence does cause them to be in pain. They definitely feel his absence. And even near the end when he lets them out of the hole, they welcome him back, to have that, feeling of wholeness again. Even though essentially this particular god figure in this case had abandoned them almost to their peril, almost to their death. I think there's something there, I think, but I don't really care if it's there or not, because I think this movie, just as a movie, as an action of a sort of Hitchcockian suspense, it is such a modern idea of a thriller and of a suspense movie that I don't really care if there's anything deeper than that, because I think as a filmic exercise, it's so good and so riveting and so beautiful in terms of the setting and the cinematography. The acting is fantastic. Charlie Shotwell is an incredible young actor who's just, I mean, he's just amazing. He is so haunting, and yet, like, you can't hate him. He's still like a very much a child, but you're also like, you're horrified by what he's doing, and you can't understand what his motivation is. And so he becomes this figure that is absolutely riveting, and you have to have just the right child actor to pull that off, and he pulls it off brilliantly. I like this movie enough that I don't really care if there's anything deeper than that.
Yeah, and I think you're onto something. I want to circle back to it here in a second, but this is definitely why people hate the movie. That, and I mean, I never got caught up in it. When I was reading reviews, like the logistics of it, I was never really bothered by it. He could have brought a ladder. He tested it. They spent so much time with him testing it that I was okay with them ending up in the hole and him getting out of it, and them being all that was, yeah. I didn't have a problem with it, but people did. People had a problem with the family forgiving him at the end.
You don't know what you would do in that situation.
No.
What are you supposed to do? Take him to the police, say he put us in a hole for a week?
People had a hard time with when the police came, and they just kind of seemed to give up on it. And again, they're not wrong, but it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
That's just what I read in bad reviews. The good reviews, other than yours, left out that whole sub story, which frustrated the hell out of me. I've been reading ideas, and none of the ideas make sense. That it's really the mom or the daughter, and she's going to do it to her kid. But they have different names. That would just be stupid. I mean, that's lazy guessing right there. The fact that John's story never really happened, and the mom's, I don't know, that doesn't make sense either, or hold water. And if that were the case, it actually kind of makes me dislike the movie. But back to your idea, I think I have a take on what you were saying. If the parents are God in the family, and he betrayed them and they still forgave him at the end, that makes more sense to me. And she's also, the mom in the sub story is not just reading John on the Hole, she's reading the story about the gardener. There's different stories she's telling the girl, which would be like the Bible. Then you're out on your own. So I can totally get behind that. And that actually is pretty cool and makes me like it even more. I do like the idea too, though, of, when you're 20 or whatever age you are, when you finally go into adulthood, the first thing you do, they always talk about the college kids that they gain the freshman 15. You go, you do whatever the fuck you want, eat whatever you want. And at some point, most of us get to the point where we are like, okay, we can't keep this up. We need to grow up. And you can, by the way this kid, just by the meals he makes, you can see the progression of him dealing with his adolescence to being a grown-up. The reason they're in there is because he wants to know what it's like to be a grown-up. He's constantly searching for that answer. He's asking his mom. He's asking the neighbor. And the way they do it is the tension and the level of creepiness is so perfect. The way they deliver both scenes where they talk about that. And it's just neat how, he really nails just, the way we were when we first became adults. Really everybody. Some of us never grow up. And we keep eating chicken nuggets forever. But when he goes and makes the risotto or whatever the hell it was, risotto, and then he goes back because he's so excited to show his family. They have, and I totally bought it. And when you throw this religion Bible thing in there, I think it fits, and it makes enough sense where it wouldn't make me turn on the movie. To me, it's not quite the suitcase in Pulp Fiction. I need a little more than just that.
Right.
But I think he does have a point, and I think it does make sense. And I'm now it's got bad reviews, and I think in a way it's kind of like he didn't care, and that's pretty awesome. He was pretty. Ari Aster, when he did Hereditary, he knew he was going to lose half the audience when he went towards the last act.
Very
and
true.
He didn't give a fuck. And I love that about this movie, because there's definitely an element of this is my movie. I'm going with it. You can come with me or not. And most people haven't, but
yeah. That's our favorite kind of filmmaker is that visionary type. And just want to circle back on something you just said about John's motivation and the fact that it could be as simple as just an experiment in adulthood. Just it makes what happens in this movie that much more terrifying and weird and scary in many ways. And it's funny. It's like, when you think about what he does while his parents are gone, he's basically doing what you did if you got the house to yourself for a weekend, I mean, and in any other way, like this could be, he's like a Home Alone character. Like he's Macaulay Culkin, but it's framed in such a way that it's terrifying. This is a terrifying thing because he's put his family in a hole. This child put his family in a fucking hole and left them there. And that is in the back of your head the entire time. Like, if there was any moment where you could try to enjoy what he's doing, you can't, because the entire time in the back of your head, his family's in a fucking hole.
Yeah. And if you go back to the biblical stuff, it even makes more sense. Like, he's driving around as a 13-year-old. Of course he's going to get pulled over. But not in the Bible. Think of all those fucking crazy stories that don't make any sense. The floods, being 600 years old, that almost even adds another element to this that I'm just like, oh, wow, this is even more of a fuck you to the audience. And this is pretty awesome. Or to a certain element of the audience. Yeah. Yeah, the more and more I mean, that really makes me like it even more. And I liked it quite a bit. And the one thing that would made me not like it is if I found out it was something as stupid as, oh, that was her in a past life, or something like that. That would take me out of it.
Yeah, I don't think he would do something that direct or
predictable.
Yeah,
or not predictable, but you know what I mean. Just
because the whole inclusion of that is just so weird. There's no explanation for it. There's no attempt to integrate it to this other story, the John story, and that leads me to believe that is a fully intentional act on his part to create this dissonance between those two things that they don't seem to connect, but you're going to have to figure out how they connect if you want to.
Right. Yeah. I think I'm sold on it. And what is it? 3 different scenes, one kind of early on, one in the middle, and the very end. Is that kind of how they
I think so. Off? I think so.
I can't remember if the one at the end is 2 full scenes. I don't know, but it see this movie and let us know what you think.
Not for everybody, but that's why we love it.
But if you're listening to it, I mean, even critics, so that's the bummer, is they're split 50-50 on this. It's not just like the audience hates it and the critics love it. It's
if you're sitting there demanding to know how he got them in the hole, you're watching the wrong movie.
And I think he does a good enough job of setting that up. And again, when you throw this biblical aspect of it, which I really think is right, it has to be, because it makes so much sense in so many different ways. It never took me out of the movie.
I mean, the God's eye effect. I mean, literally, right in the poster we're looking at on YouTube, it's a photo looking upwards to the sky. And John, in many scenes, when he's at the hole, John is seen from that perspective the entire time. That God's eye perspective. That has to be intentional.
John was an apostle.
Yeah.
And then just the idea of a plot hole and having a hole in the title. It's also kind of a genius too. So I on so many levels, this He's this is going to be a hell of a director. Not he already is, but
Yeah,
I can't wait to see what else he does because this is really smart.
yeah, I agree.
And I'm still don't have it all down, but it just makes I want to know more, and that's a sign of a great filmmaker. All right, speaking of great filmmakers, The Green Knight.
The Green Knight from director David Lowery, starring Dev Patel as a knight, not a knight, but a member of King Arthur's court. He is the King Arthur's nephew, and he's not a guy who's really noble. He's not somebody who has anything about him that is special, other than being the cousin or the nephew of King Arthur. That's basically the entire thing about him, and that's really established incredibly well in this brilliant scene where the king has Patel's character come and sit next to him at this round table Christmas celebration, and he asks him, "Tell me a story about your life," and he has no story to tell because he's this vacant, empty vessel of a person who has not done anything in his life. And Patel registers that so beautifully, wordlessly, this torturous notion that, oh my God, I've not accomplished anything in my entire life. And it's a devastating moment, wordless. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. I have no story to tell. That's just, oh man, wow. He's just revealed himself so beautifully. That was the moment I knew that I was really, really into something on this movie, was that moment. From there, in walks the Green Knight, who challenges King Arthur's court to, if anybody can land a blow on my neck, I the challenge is not important. The bottom line is that he challenges them, and in 1 year he'll return that challenge. Nobody steps up until the king decides he himself will step up, and then Dev Patel steps in his place. And he takes it, and he actually cuts off the Green Knight's head. The Green Knight then picks up his head and explains that in 1 year, I get my turn to land a blow on your neck. And it's basically just telling him 1 year from now, you're going to die. And from there, we set up this sort of series of short films, essentially, that are going to unfold as he lives out this year. He starts off by not doing anything, by not dealing with this at all, like by taking this in and just being paralyzed by terror, until finally King Arthur forces him into action and says, you need to go face this. And with just maybe, I don't know, a month or so to go before this year is up, he begins to make this pilgrimage to the Green Church, where he's going to meet the Green Knight and have this encounter and potentially die. Along the way, he has these encounters. There's a character who is a thief who is in a field with a bunch of dead bodies, just robbing everybody, and that encounter is a terrifying situation where he nearly dies, and you seemingly see him die in a way. And the symbolism surrounding it, Barry Keoghan is in that sequence, and Barry Keoghan is one of the most unpredictable, fascinating actors in the world. And his characters are so similar, and yet still he's so unpredictable. That's really amazing. He brought the same quality that he brought to The Killing of a Sacred Deer, he brings to this character. My favorite part of the entire movie, my favorite of these sequences, he goes to this cottage in the woods in the middle of the night looking for a place to stay. He lays down in a bed. A woman who of a seemingly royal breeding comes in and says, "You're sleeping in my bed." And he attempts to leave, and she stops him and says, "Will you help me find my head?" And it's just your reaction, his reaction is all the same when she says that. And then he actually helps her find her head, and we come to find out why she's there and who she is. And whew, what a sequence. What a sequence. It's so very, very good. The final sequence has him in a castle. Joel Edgerton is I think a knight or someone of royal breeding who invites him into his home. And there's a woman there who is also, the same actress is playing his love interest back when he was in Arthur's court, but that's not acknowledged in any way. So it's kind of just us in this sort of dissonant feeling, like it's the same. It's really good. So then that encounter happens, and that's what's leading him towards the Green Knight. But then there's a whole other thing that happens, and we get to this ending that is just perfect. It is such a perfect way to end this movie. Ralph Ineson from Game of Thrones plays the Green Knight, and the way he says one line at the end of this movie is so good. It's so good that it is actually the linchpin for me for this entire movie. Just the choice of how he chose to say this line is so good. That's why I love this movie.
It ties everything together so perfectly. Yeah, this was just, I'm not a sword and sandal guy at all. And knowing A24 was going to do one, I was like, okay, I mean, it's A24, so I'll give it a shot. But it's the guided ghost story. A lot of people love that movie. I've never seen it. I just, going off you and Josh, probably should see it. And but I was like, you know, why not? I don't get to go to the theater much, and it was just from the opening scene. It was just right on. Jesus Christ! Sorry if you can hear the piano in the background. Family just got back. But no, I from the first scene to the end, it was just like, this is a perfect movie. I don't get to see movies like this. I don't get to see movies like this in the big screen. Why doesn't every movie have to? Why can't every movie be like this? You know,
it's so absorbing. The look of the movie, the feel of it, the way he's essentially taking a genre film, this sword and sandals genre, you know, Knight's Quest movie, and completely updating how this is done. You know, in the past, a movie like this is done on this massively epic scale with these massive sets and these millions of extras and just all this money poured into recreating this period. And he's done that on a scale that is like 5 million times less than what anybody's done it before. And he's completely reinvented how you do it by turning it into this dream of history. And that's what this is. It is a dream like remembrance of what something like this could have been like, because obviously nobody has any real notion of what this really would have been like at that time. And so it's a recreation of that entire genre in David Lowery's image, and it's just unbelievable from that perspective, the way he's taken something that is so familiar and given it this whole new vibe, this whole refreshing vibe. I never thought I would like another one of these movies. Like, I hate Gladiator. Like, I'm not somebody who's built to enjoy a movie like this. And he took that and turns that into something so much more tangible to me. It feels so much more relatable, and it as outsized as it is, there are giants in this movie. You know, there's magic in this movie, but it feels tangible. It feels kind of almost lived in a way.
Yeah, and when he goes to meet his fate, there's this like Last Temptation of the Christ act after that, you know, where he kind of gets to go back and relive what his future would be. And I thought that was really cool. Just adding that part in there, and how this empty vessel can't outrun himself. You know, he can't outrun him being, you know, an empty vessel or a fuck up, whatever you want to call it. It's just, I don't know. It's impressive. And are we going to talk about his blankie or whatever the hell this safety net is? Because that thing is such an important part of this movie.
So his mother is a witch who essentially used magic to bring about, I guess, the Green Knight. And when she knows that her son is the one who has confronted the Green Knight, she decides to try and protect him using magic. She creates this sash for him to wear that has a magic in it that can prevent him from dying. He immediately then loses this, gets it back in a fashion that is so bizarre and so amazing. How he gets this back, and how Joel Edgerton asks him to then return it to him in a way that is so amazing, and again so revealing of the emptiness within this character. He cannot experience joy in any real way. Like, he just can't. And this is so reflective. This sash that prevents him from dying, it also prevents him from living. I know that sounds kind of cheesy when you say it like that, but honestly, truly, that is how this ends up playing out. And it's so powerful. The image of him removing the sash in the end of that dream sequence and his head just falling to the ground is it's picture perfect. It is just so spectacular. Yeah, and then after that, then of course comes the real ending and the genius of Ralph Ineson's delivery.
No, just from beginning to end, just a perfect movie. So well thought out. Every shot. I mean, every frame could be a framed picture on your wall.
Yeah.
It's just loved it. And I don't, maybe it is the fact that it's not a movie I would normally like, and he brought it, made me like it. When it's like, I'm not a fan of musicals, but when something like La La Land comes out, you're like, you kind of like it more than you normally would a normal movie. And maybe it's the same kind of thing, but I don't know. I think the artistic level is just so good here that no matter what, I would have loved this movie. Everybody should see this one. Again, it's probably not for everybody, but it should be. It disappoints me that it's not.
This is visionary on every level. He has Lowry has so much control over every aspect, from not just the script and the scene, but the dialogue. The dialogue is precise, and every piece of dialogue has a point and purpose to these scenes and to his story, and developing everything that goes along. But also, even the costuming, the choice of where to put each story as he experiences them, he's exerting so much control over all of that, so much visionary control, that you can sense the hand of a really great artist is leading you towards something incredible throughout the entire movie. And I don't care if I'm overstating it. That's how I felt. That is definitely how I felt, that I was in the hands of this incredible artist who is leading me towards something amazing. And then it arrives and it gives you something amazing at the end. And I just adore that. And I'm not even a Lowry guy. Like, I liked Old Man and the Gun. I liked Pete's Dragon. I didn't enjoy Ain't Them Body Saints, and I really, really didn't enjoy Ghost Story. Like, I found that movie to be tedious. Josh liked it. I didn't.
Josh hated it too.
Oh,
Josh
he hated it too?
He loved Pete's Dragon.
I thought he liked Ghost Story. I thought one of us liked Ghost. I know I hated Ghost Story.
You guys both, because Josh was just talking to Uncle Jeff about Ghost Story online and how much he didn't like it either. Because Uncle Jeff liked it though.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I
found it tedious, but also what I understand about that movie is that it's a visionary director who is not taking time to worry about whether you're enjoying what he's doing. He's got a vision and he's sticking to it. And that, from that perspective, I can get behind what he does in Ghost Story, because it's a singular vision. He's definitely doing something that is fully his own. And here's something he is doing that is fully his own once again.
Yeah, just fantastic. And you mentioned something earlier about kind of the idea being cheesy. A lot of this movie should be a cheesy movie, and that's kind of what our classic is. Anything else from The Green Knight before we move on to that?
This is an amazing experience of a movie. It's one of the best movies of this year and the last several years, and I would be curious to revisit my A24 list and see where I put this.
Oh yeah, it'll be on the list.
Not Midsummer, sure. But Midsummer is still Midsummer, but
it does what Midsummer does on a different level, on a little bit lower level, but still on a
it exposes Jungle Cruise as just another thing that exists in the world.
But it exposes good things too. That, you know what I'm saying? There's good movies that aren't this. I mean, you remember when I saw Midsummer? It was up until Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I hated everything after that because it wasn't Midsummer. And The Green Knight, if it wasn't for John and the Hole being a wholly original idea,
right?
I mean, this is part of why I didn't like Stillwater. Pretend that Man and X never existed, and that movie works and is great. This would have been like, who gives a fuck? It's, I love Spotlight at the time, but in any year, that's like a 10 to 15 on my list, as opposed to in the top 5, because it would have to be a weak year.
Yeah.
You need these movies, The Green Knights, The Midsummers, all those A24 movies, or a lot of them at least. just make those movies look like just another Hollywood, Oscar contender. But
there's also an accumulation factor. The fact that we see so many movies that
yes,
they just run together at a certain point. When something does pop up like this, or John in the Hole, or Giants Being Lonely, they stand out so much more and so much higher than the rest of the movies, and they expose what's missing everywhere else. This is how people become film snobs. You see too many movies, you're going to end up becoming a film snob. It's inevitable.
But you talk about, it being a disposable culture, especially the last 20 years, whatever. We keep going back. I mean, how many times have we done the A24 show? We've done that show 5 times at least, where we did a list of some sort, whether we did it at the end of the year and just did A24 separately, or we've done something A24 by itself at least 5 times, if not more. Because none of it's disposable to me, to you, to probably even Josh or anybody else who really gets into it with us. Mm-hmm. They're not disposable movies at all. And I'm not going to forget this, and I'm going to watch it again.
Oh yeah. I can't wait to watch this again.
Yeah. So that, I don't know. And I'll take it though. I don't mind. Call me a film snob. I don't really care. I'll watch these. And, we're getting into this Nicolas Cage thing, which is on a lower level, on a more indie level, I guess, than this. But still, those two are, it's just something, I need originality. I'm getting sick of just paint by numbers. Even if it's good, it's still paint by numbers.
Yeah, by any rational notion, Jungle Cruise is a good movie, but I don't care. I don't care at all about Jungle Cruise. It's a thing that exists and it happened, and it's there to entertain people who are on their phones the entire time. Like, you're not going to be engaged by it. It is not going to be remember it the next day.
Well, even like we've gone back, and part of it's the culture we live in too, but we've gone back to movies we loved, like Old School or whatever. And I'm sure if we were to dig into some other ones that I think the culture plays more of a role, but still movies like this are kind of just like, okay, I don't need to watch that. That doesn't need to be my go-to late night go to sleep movie anymore. I need originality in my life. I'm kind of sick of.
But you know what? You're gonna
comedies.
In 20 years, you're not going to worry about watching The Green Knight again, because you're going to just know that it's great. Whereas there are movies that we may have liked as kids that just they don't age well. And this is the kind of movie that is going to stand the test of time. We're not going to find out in 15 years that something like this was actually a neo-Nazi movie or something like
right.
This. Not going to happen.
Well, and you look at movies like Old School and Hangover, whatever, and not that I mean I haven't watched Hangover. Maybe Hangover is still great, but I watched it a lot in that first year or two. But then I stopped because then another movie came out, and I watched that a lot, and I stopped. I'm going to probably watch this every year for a long time, or every couple of years for a long time. I've watched all of them, not all of them, but a lot of the A24 movies a lot over and over again.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. Just well done, A24. Keep doing it.
This movie is incredible. You've done an amazing thing, and just keep doing what you do, please, forever and ever.
All right, and our classic is not Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but it might as well have been. This is a comedy.
Python,
I know, but was this a comedy?
No,
because it felt like a parody the whole time.
It really did. It's so awful. So I was looking for something to relate to The Green Knight somehow, and this is the same story as The Green Knight. This is Sir Gawain and The Green Knight. Sean Connery is the Green Knight, the same Green Knight that is in The Green Knight. And Miles O'Keefe, what is with that haircut? I mean, who thought that was a good idea?
I mean, it looks like it should be the Princess Bride. That's how goofy the characters are. They look.
That's the same haircut that the guy in Spaceballs wore. I mean, when he played Prince Valium. This movie is supremely dumb, but it's an amazing kind of a film school moment when you look at how two different people can take the same material and make something so completely different. You've got this transcendent work of art in The Green Knight in the hands of David Lowery, and then you've got this in the hands of whoever did this. And it just goes to show you just that just different people see things in very different ways. There's a lot of similar elements. There's not a lot of similar elements in terms of just the very basic story. I'm saying not in the style or anything like that, but they're telling the same ancient tale. Like they're both inspired by the same story, and they come out in completely different ways. But we still have the Green Knight confronting Gawain, and Gawain cutting off his head, and him picking up his head and putting it back on, and telling him that he'll kill him in 1 year, and they're going to confront each other. And it plays out from there. He goes on a knight's quest and ends up, facing off and so on, and meets a beautiful woman at a certain point who kind of becomes a love interest. Which that doesn't really happen in The Green Knight. There's a love interest per se. She's meant more to show how empty his life is.
Right.
That's what she's there for. The characters in this movie have no purpose. They are enacting. This is the very definition of just taking it from the page to the screen with no attempt to at depth or anything. You're just enacting what was in front of you. This is what I'm told to do. I'm supposed to hit this mark and do this thing. Very obviously, that's what I do. Okay, move on. Next scene. Sean Connery's completely checked out to a point of absolute hilarity. Like, he's certainly enjoying himself. He's jerking off all over the screen. He's enjoying himself, but he's not doing anything for anybody else. You can see almost the complete disdain he has for everyone around him, especially Miles O'Keefe.
I mean, it almost was like they're making it for kids, which is, and maybe it was, I was only like, what was this, 82? So I'd been like 3 when it came out. So, I was too
Except
young.
There's a beheading in this movie where a guy is beheaded and puts his own head back on.
Yeah, but it's played so cartoony. And I don't know when Monty Python and the Holy Grail came out, but I want to believe it came out after this. And I
thought that was 74.
Probably was
late 70s. This is 83.
Which makes this even worse.
You knew that was in the world. You still made this.
Right. Like, I could see watching this movie like, well, we'll just act just like them and make it a comedy. But if that was in the world, and you're right, I think it was in the 70s.
Which, in many ways, the Princess Bride could have taken some of this story and done that.
And they played it the same. It flowed just like the Monty Python movie, just like the Princess Bride. I could not tell if it was a parody or not. The
only way I can sense that this wasn't a parody is that I don't think Miles O'Keefe is an actor capable of that level of parody, because I just don't think, he's so bad, it's hard to believe that anybody could be that bad intentionally.
Yeah.
You happen upon that level of bad. You not actually are that bad. It's Wissowian in its way. You don't know what you're doing is wrong, but you're doing it anyway.
And it's a long movie too. It's not like
it goes on for a while.
Yeah, I saw this before The Green Knight too. It's
free on Tubi.
Yeah, save your free money. Just watch commercials.
Watch a blank screen for the same amount of time, and you'll be just as enriched.
Yeah, and let a commercial pop up every couple minutes. And yeah, it was bad. But that is our show. We went over the 91 movies. Next week, we've got Don't Breathe 2, Free Guy, Respect, Homeroom, movie on Hulu, Beckett with John David Washington on Netflix, a movie called Coda, and then the Val Kilmer documentary on Amazon. I think it's already out now, actually.
I think so too, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, and the classic's going to be Real Genius, and there's 3 movies from 91, The Commitments, Mystery Date, Women and Men 2. I must have really been I'd have never even heard of those movies. Maybe I saw the posters, I'd know what they were.
We're not abandoning the premise of 91 movies, but
it's just a weak round.
It's 91's not a great year. It's not.
No.
Also next week, I'm going to talk about a movie called Materna, which I've actually got 2 pieces on that are out right now. I don't think it's a good movie, but I think there are so many good things about it. But there's some things that are there's some choices made in that movie that are very off. And like I said, I wrote a 2,000 word essay on the visual filmmaking of this movie, that where it goes wrong, the choices that they made that I think kind of sink the movie. But at the same time, it has the look of a guy who could make a John in the Hole or could make an A24 movie. So it makes Materna something that I'm fascinated by and hopeful about. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that next week. And also, I'm watching a really fascinating documentary from IFC called The Meaning of Hitler, which is exploring Hitler, essentially how Hitler is seen today, and trying to figure out a way to force people to kind of, grab you by your shoulders and remind you he was real. He did this stuff. He was evil. Don't forget. And as often as we see Hitler being tossed around as a pejorative, towards Trump or towards, that type of thing is, I understand where you're coming from. At the same time, you don't realize that you're dampening the impact of saying his name and remembering what he did. And that makes this documentary so interesting.
Yeah. Is that going to be available?
Yes, that'll be streaming on demand as of Friday.
Awesome.
And Materna is available now. It's available to stream anytime anybody wants right now. So I do think there's something to see in Materna, but there's also, like I said, a good deal that I don't think is good enough.
Yeah, and I'm trying to decide how comfortable I am in the theaters. We've had some vax people get COVID at work, and not that I'm because I'm vaccinated, I'm not worried about the vaccine.
Right, but you've got a child who can't get vaccinated.
Right, and I have friends. I have some people with cancer. I got some other friend of my son's is going through chemo, so he can't get vaccinated, and little things like that. But I'm not worried about me because I got the vaccine. I'll, keep me out of the hospital, keep me from dying, most likely. That's what it's there for. Everybody that I know that has the vaccine and got COVID is fine. So it's not there to keep you from getting it. It's there to keep you out of the hospital if you get it.
Yes.
But whatever. Off my soapbox. All right, Wick, we are running a little long, but unless you need to get going.
No, I'm good.
Run a quick round of flick chart until we get something funny. If it's right off the bat, then we'll just end it early. I'm not letting you do that one. I know it's funny, but Girl Interrupted Spartacus.
Girl Interrupted. Yeah. Spartacus is great, but after you see The Green Knight, it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that was Kubrick as a director for hire, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't really
still an epic in many ways, and I get it, but
as good as it could have been for what they were trying to do. But
yeah,
Girl Interrupted was a better movie.
That Batman movie? And Robin, I'm not sure what that is. I think it's a serial.
The Shootist, The Descendants.
The Descendants for me.
I agree. Never been a big John Wayne fan.
Yeah, we should probably be looking into them at some point. But yeah, there's been no good reason to.
Don't love him. Don't like Elvis. Don't like Babe Ruth. I don't know. Just me.
Oh, that reminds me. There's another documentary called The Faithful that I wasn't sure if we're going to talk about or not next week because I'm not sure about its release. It's very, very independent, but it's a documentary by a woman who is dealing with grief. She lost a very important family member, and in the midst of that, she goes on this journey to Italy, to the Vatican, and this is in the time of Pope John Paul, and she sees all of this ludicrous, stuff dedicated to Pope John Paul, to the point where there's like a Pope John Paul lollipop. He's on, his face is everywhere on all these products, And that reminded her of her trip to Nashville, where she saw Elvis, and she went to Graceland and she saw all these people gathering to mourn him. And then Pope John Paul dies and people gather to mourn him. And she gets into this thing about grief and the way this mass exposure of grief. And that brings her also to Princess Di, who passes away in the process of her making these observations about death. And she brings all these three together, the Princess Di, Elvis, and the Pope, together, while also on her own grief journey. And it's really, really fascinating. But the availability of that one is a little bit hard. It is available, I think, if you want to do a virtual screening on Friday or Saturday and from New York City. It's $10, gotcha. But it's not something that's very easy to find.
Gotcha.
But it's called The Faithful, if anybody wants to look into it.
Twilight or Darkman?
Twilight.
Really?
I think Darkman's kind of a piece of shit.
I do too.
Not that Twilight's not a piece of shit, but yeah. I just don't care either way. Fishing with Gandhi.
Darkman wins. I always win with less important twin flips. Super 8, Aaron Brockovich.
Super 8.
Aaron Brockovich. Again. Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows, 4 Rooms.
Sherlock Holmes. I just don't think four Rooms comes together. Not that Sherlock Holmes comes together all that well, but well enough, I guess. It's entertaining enough. Robert Downey Jr. is fun.
Yeah. Scent of a Woman, Howard the Duck.
Howard the Duck. It's far more memorable than Scent of a Woman. I hate Scent of a Woman. That's what I remember about it, is just hating it.
And just wait till next year. Grown Ups, An American in Paris.
An American in Paris.
Intolerable Cruelty, Super Troopers.
I think Intolerable Cruelty is really underrated. I think that movie is actually pretty funny, and Clooney's his chemistry with her is just phenomenal.
Yeah. Flags of Our Fathers, Finding Dory.
Finding Dory. Flags of Our Fathers is fine, but it's not. Right. Finding Dory is more moving.
Zombieland, The Last Starfighter.
Zombieland.
Agreed. Deadpool, The Bodyguard.
Deadpool.
Yeah, Prisoners, 27 Dresses.
This shouldn't be hard for me, but it kind of is, because I kind of love 27 Dresses. It's just one of those real sweet comfort movies. Prisoners is the choice, but I do have a big soft spot in the same way. It's not nearly as good as Legally Blonde, but it has a similar feel to it in that comfort food kind of movie. So, but Prisoners is the choice.
Is that the one that the guy did?
Yeah.
I need to rewatch that because I did not like it the first time I saw it. I like everything else he's done. So All the President's Men, House of Flying Daggers.
That's another tough one, man, because House of Flying Daggers is gorgeous. I'm gonna go All the President's Men because I think it's more meaningful, but House of Flying Daggers is an amazing movie. Even overcoming my hatred of Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah.
That's how good All the President's Men is. It makes me not hate Dustin Hoffman for a role for once.
But this is the one. What's one of those back to, you got your Green Knight and then you got your standard movie, but you're right. It's a really good one. The Bone Collector, He Knows You're Alone.
He Knows You're Alone is better just because it has that one line. Isn't that the one with the call coming from inside the house?
I have no idea. Swingers, The Fighter.
Swingers, because it's more memorable than The Fighter. I know I liked The Fighter, but I can recall Swingers.
I'm going to put Swingers on before The Fighter. I did like it a lot. I've watched it more than once, but Swingers is... I like the indie score a little better. One Night Stand, E.T.
I've never seen One Night Stand, or at least I don't think I have.
Versus Predator, Requiem, E.T.
E.T. I don't love E.T., but E.T. is better than that movie.
The Philadelphia Story, Movie.
Philadelphia Story. By a lot.
The hot chick gladiator. There we go.
Fuck you. Gladiator wins.
Green Lantern, the cider house.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Green Lantern. Fuck the Cider House Rules.
Really?
I hate the Cider House Rules. I think that movie is such a piece of shit. It's an even bigger piece. I would watch Green Lantern 15 times before I watch that fucking Cider House Rules shit.
I like Ryan Reynolds, though. Even though
at least it's got that
great.
going for it.
Yeah, you're right.
There's nothing going for it. Even Charlize Theron can't make that fucking piece of shit watchable.
She has like brief moods. Deadpool, Dog Day Afternoon.
Dog Day Afternoon's incredible, but Deadpool is hilarious. So I gotta pick Deadpool.
Yeah, I agree. Gothica, Made in Manhattan.
Gothica. Gothica's a piece of shit, but it smells less than Made in Manhattan.
Yes. Star Trek Generations, House of Flying Daggers.
House of Flying Daggers.
Yes. Eraserhead, the Mexican.
Fishing with Gandhi.
Yeah. I like Eraserhead because I'm supposed to like it. I've tried reading his book.
Yeah.
Listening to the audiobook. And basically what Eraserhead's about is nothing that's on the screen. It's like him afraid of having a kid. And I don't know. District 9, The Great Saint.
Never heard of that second one.
Snowpiercer, District 9.
Yes, Snowpiercer.
Yeah. Lost in Translation, Kiss the Girls.
Lost in Translation.
Absolutely. People Under the Stairs, Creed.
Creed.
About Time to Go All the Way.
About Time.
Battle Royale, Dr. Dolittle.
I want to combine those movies so bad.
Battle Eddie Royale. Murphy's characters fight each other to the death.
No, I just want to watch everybody in Dr. Dolittle get murdered, just violently and viciously.
Put John, put them all in the holes. All right, we're not going to do anything good, so we're going to call the show right there.
All right, good.
All right, talk to everybody later.